Perfect. Okay. We're all set.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording the meeting, as you heard. This is so that we continue with the transparency that we've been really intentional about through this ARPA process. And another note is that you all are here to help us select a provider. So Pinellas Community Foundation is working with the City of Clearwater to select a nonprofit who will be responsible for supporting residents of the Capri Mobile Home Park, which is closing in March, and to provide emergency social services to the residents who need the help. So what we're going to be doing today is going through introductions. Right after I finish, we'll hear from the applicants, and then you as a committee will be able to ask questions of the applicants. And then after we speak to both applicants, you'll be able to make a decision so that we can get the process moving and get the assistance to the residents. So let's start with introductions. My name is Jocelyn Howard, and I'm the Senior Program Officer for our ARPA work at the Pinellas Community Foundation.
I'm David Bender. I'm the Director of Grants at Pinellas Community Foundation, and I'm helping support the ARPA program.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Doug Cooley, the CEO of the Pinellas Community Foundation. Chuck Lane, City of Clearwater. I probably started all this. So you can thank me.
Yes.
I work in economic development.
I am Lester Jennifer McKay, the Program Director of the SSI program at Gulf Coast JFCS.
I'm Maria Pepe, community member, and also part of some other community organizations.
I'm Kim Crawford, the Executive Director of the Will Carson Health and Wellness Center.
Good morning, Daisy Korea, Simmons in the Paul Cares, and I'm the Deputy Housing Programs.
I'm Nehemiah Warner. I'm the grant manager also with here.
Thank you all. So we're going to start off with letting both of you give us a really quick overview, more than 5 minutes of your application, and then we will let the committee members ask any questions and have some time for conversation.
So I'll start off. To kind of go over the application, so this was a very urgent process. So I think we approached this application with that urgency, but also a level of care for households that are in a very tough situation. So we are looking to dedicate 2 bilingual case managers and 2 immediately get on the ground and kind of find out that we've done all we can to get information about what's going on there, but we want to get a bilingual staff there and find out specifically what types of services the households need. What we bring to the table is our expertise with a large toolkit of different housing programs. And until we know exactly what they need, we really couldn't address that, so we want to keep it as broad as possible. But that could be anything from emergency shelter into a hotel, rapid rehousing as well. But then also the piece that we're not as familiar with would be that relocating of the actual mobile homes. We've been in touch with collaborating with one of our conferences here closer in Clearwater, Chrissy Bond, who's at the St. Paul Community Kitchen, and she had linked us to Kathy Hano, who is the police social services specialist, and we were able to get more of an idea of that piece that we didn't know as much about with the relocation services and kind of the cost that would be associated with that, and then connecting them with resources that would help cover those costs. They are high. It's just like 14 grand. They cover 7 grand. So I know in our application we talked about, depending on how many people are needed to be served, that would lead on average, if we're going off the 90 number, it'd be about 2,000. But we don't see that as a one size fits all. It would definitely be based on need. So it wouldn't, most likely it wouldn't be that amount. Our understanding is handfuls have already been resolved, and there are 13 or so, and then another 40 or so have been responsive to any other services that have been needed. So until again we get the boots on the ground to really understand from the client's mouth what they're looking for. we wouldn't really be able to identify specifically how much they would be needing. But our services are housing first, client led. So we would do a housing stabilization plan. The bilingual staff would be doing a housing stabilization plan with the clients there, residing at the Capri, to find out what exactly they desire for their housing solution. And then from there, we would be able to build a more accurate projection and plan on how exactly those very fixed services would need to be, and then what services would be needed long-term to kind of build out from there, either the ongoing case management or other needs in the community, rapid rehousing. I know you've spoken about that with Mr. Lane. So that's kind of the broad picture. I think that the other thing I want to mention too, just to speak to that expertise. So over the decade that we've been providing rapid rehousing services and prevention, on average, 91% of the prevention households resolve to a positive housing outcome, and then with the rapid rehousing, it's 81%. And I only say that just to show a level of expertise. I know that this particular situation is unique to the clients that we typically serve, but I wanted to just give credence to that. I think I'm probably like at a minute, 15 seconds.
Yeah, so I mean, I think to add to what Nehemiah is saying, so a lot of our projects are rapid rehousing and emergency housing focus. So what we generally do is when we receive a family from the coordinated entry, we assess the situation with our case managers. Do they are safe? Are they safe at that moment? Do we need to emergency house them? Place them into one of our rapid rehousing programs that we have for veterans or non-veterans. We assess the need of the client depending on how long the rapid rehousing program is set for that particular schedule. Then we look at more long-term type solutions like community vouchers, emergency vouchers, and we connect clients to community resources as well for longer-term financial assistance. So that's kind of our expertise when we're looking at that. So for this unique application, like Nehemiah said, we really want to get in there and see what assess the needs of the clients, where they need to go. Do we have to refer internally to community resources, link them to other services? What is the need of that client right then and there, and then we can assess it forward. If there's a housing stability plan, a budget plan that needs to be created, that's what our case managers are always focused.
Yeah, I think the only other, I think the other piece I want to add was that collaborative piece. Due to the rapid turnaround on the grant, we weren't able to kind of dig in as much as we would like to kind of build those relationships. We would like to work with the Hispanic Outreach Center for supportive services, as well as area agency on aging. We have contacts with those, but we still need to kind of get that ball rolling as well. But it would be a community effort to really serve the households there as best as possible.
Thank you. To our committee members, just so that you know what you have in front of you, this is a sheet with average scores of both organizations and then your comments so that you can see what all of you wrote, but I'll open it up for questions that you can ask of them. Those are the past.
So it's my first question. I want to make sure I'm understanding the referral process. So how is it that the residents get connected to?
Sure. So the way that we wrote it would be basically everything shy of doing a smoke signal. You know, we will be communicating in every way that we can with the client there, through postings, through door to door. Any contact information we have for people residing there, calling, through door hangers, but really getting face to face to let them know of the service that is available to them, should they choose it. I know that work has already started. So a lot of like the contact I mentioned, the Kathy Hamer, where we kind of pick up where they left off, so that we're not duplicating, but really targeting people that haven't really provided a response of what their plan is. So that would be the first step of it. And then next would be kind of what they do, some of that prioritization of doing the assessment, finding out what exactly they need, how urgent their timeline is, whether or not they need to move their mobile home, whether or not they need to move to family, whether or not they want, the emergency house, if they're in the rapid housing process. The technicality, I think, around this is our work is typically with literally homeless people, which is I believe a hard term of how you can actually serve people. So if they are eligible for the rapid housing programs, they would have to be literally homeless for those programs. So that would mean they'd have to be in an emergency shelter situation. So if they're in a hotel motel, then they would immediately be eligible for rapid housing because they are literally homeless. But they aren't technically literally homeless right now, but it's not a situation we want to see happen. So that's where the emergency shelter would come.
So it would be more of an outreach / case management when you do the process. We wouldn't need to go through a coordinated entry process because the clients are not literally homeless. So that would be more of a direct referral to us. Any type of contact that needs to be done, they would just call the team, and the team will go there and make sure that they're in contact. So it'll be more of a direct link.
And as far as the literature that's out there, it's also bilingual or?
That we would be issuing.
Well, I think when you were mentioning that your ways of interacting or
Yes.
letting people know that you're there, you mentioned post or.
Yes, so that would certainly be, anything that would be created would be bilingual, any door hangers, anything posted there at the actual mobile home facility would be bilingual for sure.
And we have a development team that does all of our brochures and flyers for the programs that we currently have. We have the capacity to translate those into Spanish or any other languages.
I have a question. Sorry, I was in crowded spaces this past weekend, so I want to be very mindful. So I really appreciate that you are expecting us to meet with people and understand their needs before creating a very specific plan without listening from the community. Do you have a physical office in Clearwater that people can go and get to see somebody face to face and create that trust?
So a part of it would be the collaborating with our conference in Clearwater, so they've offered to negotiate space there in Clearwater, so we would be right there, close to the Capri. We have another office that's not quite as close, but we wanted something that would be even closer. So that's kind of been our plan to get as close as possible. But a lot of the time, we've budgeted a vehicle as well to be able to, spend the time there in the park.
On site, okay, thank you.
You mentioned, they need to be homeless to be part of your rapid housing programs. Now, when that happens, does that mean they're now eligible for another program? Are there other resources that are available? Not just funding that's being applied here?
Correct. Yeah, they would be, through the coordinated entry system that Daisy was speaking about. So initially, they wouldn't be part of coordinated entry because they're not literally homeless but once. And if it were the best fit for them to go to an emergency shelter situation, as an interim, then yes, they would be eligible for any rapid housing or any other resources in the community, not specific to us, but other programs, yeah.
Did I hear you say that 40 have shelters off?
No, I wish. Maybe by now. I think every time, based on the information provided, I think it was less than 20, it was like 10 or 15 or so. And then 40 or so had been responsive to the community meetings. I think that was the numbers that we were provided.
So in your application, you talk about being very capable of hiring people quickly because of your network. Do you need to scale up to do this? Do you need to hire people?
We are basically.
Yeah, so we have internal staff right now that if this was an application that was granted to us, we can shift over for a bilingual who have experience that we can move from other programs right now to assist with this project. So we would be able to do that internally fairly quickly without having to post and hire and having to take that time to to do all of that process, we would have an internal team that can go in and start tomorrow if needed.
Just a few from me to give us a little bit more context. What do you think for residents in a situation like this that you encounter is the length of time between actually completing an assessment, sort of their housing plan, and then placement elsewhere? Really looking at if most of these, if we can, through some type of permanent stable housing, not having to worry about coordinated entry, like what do you think the length of time that is between assessing and really getting moved somewhere else?
Yeah, so, in our other programs, we do have prevention programs with veterans, and we do have a prevention program with the city of Largo and our rapid rehousing. So what our best practices internally for all of our programs is we have to contact within 24 hours or same day. We make that contact, we set up within the first 5 business days, we make sure that we set up that interview, that appointment intake or screening with the client. So as soon as we do the intake screening, we start assessing the client's needs. After that, once we know what the client's goal is as far as housing situation, then we move into a housing stability plan where we review their finances, their housing, their income, all of the needs that they have, so we can do the best wraparound service for them. So I would say 24 hours for a contact. Within the first 5 business days, we would start doing all of the assessments, and if we need to assign, we have a team of housing specialists and housing navigators that's their job, is to focus on housing. As soon as we do those steps with the client and do the housing stability plan, we assess for housing needs, and we assign that housing specialist or navigator to that particular client. So not only do they have a case manager, they also have a housing specialist that is helping them with whatever particular situation it is that they need at that point. But we usually try to do everything within the first 5 business days.
And then for residents in this situation, how long do you think it would be between sort of that, completing that assessment and really accomplishing what they want to through a housing stability plan based on the current market conditions and other issues, knowing that, you know, this was the affordable housing option for families and individuals that were there? What do you think?
So right now, because of the market is taking us a little bit longer, we're looking at anywhere between 45 days to about 50 days to find permanent housing. But those are our more challenging cases with clients that may not have any income. So if we have a family that has income and has a little bit better credit history, or just depending on what their needs are, it may be 30 to 45 days. It just really depends on the situation of the client.
Do you have, when you're talking about collaborations, are you thinking about bringing on any collaborative efforts, or have you before with any of the legal aid agencies?
We have internal, we've moved towards having internal legal services. So we have a chief of legal services, and he's building quite a team. I think we're up to 3 now. So we're able to provide that in-house, but then also, yeah, definitely we also refer out through subcontracts that we have through SSPF.
We have employment with Bowie. We have a partnership with them, especially for employments. We do have SOAR case managers internally that if there's any type of need of any benefits that clients need or be eligible for that they're not aware of, we link them to those services as well. Like Nehemiah said, we do have an internal legal team, so they can assist with any legalities or anything that the client may need, whether they're a veteran or not a veteran. So we have those linkages. And then of course, our conference that would definitely assist with any type of services. Sometimes they have a pot of funding that is non-restrictive that maybe we can help them leverage that as well. If this program or other programs can't pay for that.
Can you share a little bit about the follow-up once they are in a stable housing setting? how long is the case management after that?
Well, it depends, because for this particular grant, it seems like it's a short term, but if we do have the clients enrolled into other programs, we can case manage the clients up to a year, or some other programs up to 24 months, without financial assistance, but case management is always an option. And if we can provide those services, there's always linkages to other community providers. But typically, for our rapid rehousing programs, we can case manage for up to a year.
I have a question. How's your experience with residents that are not documented?
So we don't, I think we have one program that may assist. But we typically don't provide a lot of services because we don't have the programs to assist for undocumented clients, but we do have legal services that can probably link them to other resources. But right now, I think we only have a continuum of care program that may be able to assist. But we would have to get special permission and approval from that.
Any other questions for Daisy and Nehemiah? Okay,
Okay,
thank you so much. We really appreciate your application, especially in the tight timeframe. Yeah, good. And thanks for being here today. I think we'll wrap up part one in that case, and you both are free to go. And we can have a little time to discuss in between before part two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks. Oh.
So for a little extra context, you may know that we're doing this live interview process to kind of speed the application along so that we didn't have to wait for two applications. So if you have, any thoughts, you're welcome to discuss now amongst yourselves. And then of course, we'll have some time for the decision-making after you speak to the Homeless Leadership Alliance. But since we have a few minutes, they probably won't be here for about 5 minutes or so. I just want to invite you if you want to discuss anything or, discuss any questions that you might have for HLA when they get here. Or take a break and get water. That's also okay.
We have waters too.
Yeah.
I'll get more, we need more.
I have a question about if when any of the two applicants receive the funding and they are not working with families that are undocumented, that's not going to be a restriction because it's coming from the foundation, correct?
You're talking about for undocumented families?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, because I wanted to break into that, but I didn't know, do we have restrictions on that? Okay, all right. That's good to know, because I think that was some of the challenge before in the relocation of Southern Comfort too, is finding out what programs people are eligible for outside of,
Even without the restriction, it's a challenge because people are so reluctant to get the help they need.
right.
We're seeing that out there. I think we had two very qualified applicants. This is encouraging. It really is. Either of these or both of them could really do good things out there. So I'm really happy with that.
I think Tuesday, tomorrow will be I saw a former client of mine. I met this lady 15 years ago. And she's telling me all the good stories about her daughter. But she said that they live in the mobile home park. And her daughter she's an excellent student, 4.0. but lately she doesn't want to go to school. She's really scared and depressed. So it was at the school ESOL fair. So I told her, it would be a good idea to connect with mental health care providers that were there. So, and I've been thinking about families like that.
I have a question about more about the evaluation process. I think there was a sample that was sent, and the lead toward the bottom and had questions about, do you think this organization or applicant should be funded? And then I think there was a question about maybe partial funding. Again, this was in the example, but that wasn't in the one that we did, right? Okay, I kept thinking, I said, did I miss? I wasn't sure if I missed something.
Oh, the tutorial, that was
Yes.
for a different grant. So it was just an example of how to use the portal itself, not the rubric.
But
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Some questions were a little different.
Right, it was
Okay,
just meant to show you the interface, not the actual rubric itself. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was from the resiliency fund.
Got it.
I think I missed something.
No. That's actually a good point of improvement for that document, because we use that with committee members, that's really good.
Well, I was also looking at the game last night, so then I said, okay, am I missing it because I'm looking at the game?
I like the system with the side by side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did it at home where I didn't have two screens.
Mhm.
It made a difference.
Yes,
Cool.
we get a lot of good feedback about that.
I was in crowded spaces and people, I think, forgot that somebody was coughing their lungs out next to me.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, really, I had to get them tissue. I was not the one with the cough problems, and I was the one with the recorded tissues of the mask. I'm like, if I offered a mask. I'm like, just in case.
Thank you for that.
I'm curious for the timeline, once you all identify a awardee. How does what's the timeframe after that?
We're gonna try to get it to contract rapidly. We'll verify with Chuck in the city, but try and get a contract on so people can get out there and be ready to go.
And you all will be making that recommendation to us today, so.
Oh, gotcha, okay, yeah, I'm picking up on that. This is a quick turnaround.
Exactly.
I know HLA had a pretty robust and kind of organized timeline. When was their start date? They anticipated actually running services February.
At least the one for St. Vincent de Paul said early February when they made their timeline. And then the timeline really, like for HLAs, there states February 1.
February 1.
And that's the date we gave them of contract execution, that it would be moving quickly.
So in the comments, and I'm not trying to, throw people out there, but I think I read that there was a concern about the time frame, the timeline.
Yeah, that was fine. I noticed that, because I read it in that order, so I was coming from a very structured, like this date and this day, this is what we're planning with the Leadership Alliance, and then I moved to a very good application that's in the fall, but I didn't have that structure. So I think it made it a little bit more.
So after hearing from St. Vincent de Paul, does that seem more realistic in your?
I think it does, in fact, because to me, what they're trying to do is to understand me first. Instead of assuming.
Good morning.
Welcome. You can join us here.
Are we okay to touch?
Yeah. You never know. Yes.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invite. I apologize for responding and RSVPing like that. Our pit day on Thursday was a very, very big, long day, so it was a little bit of delay on everything. It was during that time. Yes.
Did everyone feel like they had a little breathing room, need any water breaks, or are we good to go ahead
Good to go.
and start? Okay. Well, thank you again for coming. My name is Jocelyn Howard. I'm our ARPA Senior Program Officer at PCF. We're going to start with some quick introductions. Then we will ask you to do a quick, 5-minute overview of your application and your strengths. And just a couple housekeeping notes. We are recording this meeting and broadcasting it. We are being very transparent throughout our whole ARPA process, and so we're continuing it with this conversation.
I'm David Bender, I'm the Director of Grants at Pinellas Community Foundation, and I'm just supporting Jocelyn today, so, yeah. The tech whiz,
Right.
I don't want to have a whiz, but tech, okay.
Welcome, I know you both, Doug and Cooley, the CEO of the Pinellas Community Foundation.
Chuck Lane, Stillwater Economic Development Housing Department.
I'm John McKay, Program Director of the FSI program at Gulf Coast JFCS.
Maria Pepe, I'm a community member. I'm also part of different organizations.
Kim Crawford, the Executive Director at the Will Carlson Health and Wellness Center.
Avery Sliker, Chief Program Officer for the Homeless Leadership Alliance. Dr. Monica Lesick, CEO of Homeless Leadership Alliance. And thank you all for allowing us to come today. I have a little bit of throat scratch, so I apologize for going back to my water quite often. I'm a little too loud on the week apparently. So thank you. So thank you all very much for inviting us backstage to talk about how we as a community can work with our residents to create mobile home park. A little bit about the HLA. For those who do not know, we are the flower development for our Pinellas County Continuum of Care, and we have been such for many years. I am the new CEO of the organization, came on as an interim in August, and then was selected by the board in October to continue leading this wonderful organization. To start off, we have some very strong capacity internally, which I'd like to highlight. We have Dr. Sliker, who has over 30 years of social service experience, including housing, anthropology, and social research. We also have a very dedicated team of 25 individuals with extensive experience in everything from ensuring fiscal policies are effectively managed to our housing navigators, who are our frontline team and our rapid resolution specialists, who actively work with families to ensure homelessness is a brief, one-time and limited experience. Specifically for this proposal, I'm very happy to report that our housing navigators have successfully, since November of 2020, successfully housed more than 135 families in our community. And we are currently working with 13 additional families throughout the county to help find them suitable housing. Our proposal specifically for Capri Mobile Home comes from the fact, one of the main reasons we're already working with these residents. These are our neighbors who we are already working with and have been since the call went out on December 14th, when we received the email that this park is going to be shutting down. So we actively started working with those families who were eligible for any current funding that we may have that might have been suitable to help them find additional housing opportunities. We have partnered with the Hispanic Outreach Center to ensure that these families have appropriate translation services. As someone whose first language was German, I wish I knew Spanish. I've tried to learn Spanish, but it goes from Spanish to German to English. So I am learning online, but we want to ensure that all residents have appropriate translation services. And while we do have quite a few members of our staff that do speak Spanish, we want to make sure it's appropriate Spanish and Spanish for different dialects of residents within this community. Our housing navigators follow the National Alliance to End Homelessness guidelines and policies for housing navigation, which includes crisis resolution, family choice, respect, and empowerment, providing minimal assistance, which is necessary for the short time period, and maximizing and maintaining community resources. And finally, using the right resources at the right time for the right families within these difficult situations. Our housing navigators, who will be working directly with the residents, along with our landlord liaison, who is, I call him our chief development officer with landlords. He's been very successful in forming very meaningful, lasting relationships with landlords in our community, which has resulted in us being able to leverage those relationships to ensure that our families have very safe income. And I heard David say, you know, when you take on one of our families, you get all of us with them. So our landlords know that this is just not we're just gonna place somebody with you. We do have a very timeline set up. We would begin, obviously, the first couple of days of the month doing intakes and assessments. Finally, we would do document readiness and working with our landlord liaison. And also then finally on the 24th, we'd like to publish an exit plan to present to you all, if selected, to ensure that these families do have an exit strategy. As we know, March 14th is going to come really, really quickly. I can't believe that it's already February this week. So that's kind of an overview. Again, we've only asked for a small amount of funds for staffing support. The remainder of the funds, so returning 44,000, would go directly to support these residents in this mobile home park and finding new, sustainable, and safe housing. Did I miss anything?
Thank you so much. So we'll open it up to the committee to ask any questions or clarifications you might have.
Can you talk more about the landlord liaison? You know, in our program with landlords, it's gotten pretty hectic and it's hard to actually find a landlord who wants to work with community partners. Can you talk about how that landlord liaison will work with the clients?
Absolutely. So David, he has been with our team for over a year, if I'm not mistaken. He is a dynamic individual who has never met a stranger. And when I truly say he's like a chief development officer for landlords, so he works with the realtor associations, but also is getting more involved with the apartment associations to share the stories of what's really going on in Pinellas County with landlords. We're working with both small, independent, and also we're trying to forge relationships, or he's trying to forge relationships with larger apartment communities and also housing landlords within our community. He finds out what families need. Again, this is not us as service providers saying, you know, we think this is what you need in your housing requirements. So he works not only with the housing navigators, but with our families to say, if you really need it, what do you want? We want our families to have a, you know, just as anybody here who's bought a home or had to work with a landlord, it can be somewhat contentious. So he is an advocate for our families. And also, so what he's doing is he's building that relationship, helping our families find a place, but then he's also providing those supports, not wraparound supports, because those truly come from our housing navigators, but he's that person who's going to call the landlord and say, hey, you know, we know so-and-so, this family has been with you for a month. How are things going? Do you have any other open units where we could maybe bring in a family? We know you've been working well. He has done a phenomenal job of really breaking down some silos and barriers that a lot of us are facing with housing insecurity in our community. You know, again, part of his job is his passion. And I think that it's something very innovative. We've spoken with our public housing authorities about this. We've shared this information with HUD last week when they were with us at our point in time study. This is something very innovative and a beautiful way to show our landlords that these are their neighbors that we're wanting to help them find a place to live. And I think David's been very successful in that. Did I miss Avery?
I think what's really important to know is how David starts his day every single day, Monday through Friday. He starts his day by going and meeting brokers and landlords and having coffee with them. He does not do this over the phone. He does not do it over Zoom. He makes his list over the weekend and he makes those calls over the weekend and has his week set up so that he's in a different part of the county each morning. And so David starts his day much earlier than I. And that's what he's doing at 7 o'clock in the morning is he is meeting brokers and landlords and associations and having coffee with them to explain programs. I think a telling tale of this is that he now has landlords calling him and asking him, do you have any more vouchers? I really like that voucher program. When emergency housing vouchers first came out, it was pulling teeth, as we all know it is, to find housing. And he now has landlords calling him, asking him, do you have any more of those programs? I would love to house folks. So he's there saying, no, but let's have a conversation about this. Or if that excited you, let me tell you about this program I'm working with. And so that's what he does.
I highly recommend it to everyone, actually. It's a really, we've seen a lot of success and our landlords, you know, they call us and say, got a family, which is, I mean, honestly, what else could we, you know, besides to shut the doors down one day, what else could we ask for?
And it is rough. I'm not gonna lie. He has some moments, he has some days. There are pockets in this community where there's just no housing. There's absolutely no housing in Margo right now.
Has he done any outreach with other mobile home parks?
He does. But because of situations like this, he's hesitant at times. I'm gonna be honest with you, Chuck, he's very hesitant at times with that.
Some of those mobile home parks may be great recipient sites for some of these folks.
Yes, and he would do that. But again, when we're talking about for free, we have to understand that a lot of these folks already came from a closed mobile home park.
Yeah.
So they're gonna feel pretty jaded. So he would not do that unless he had done some really hardcore research about the brokering behind the fact and the ownership of the parks. I mean, I'm watching the news right now. You've got the park in St. Pete where they convinced the residents to sell the land and now they're selling the park. So these are things that we have to watch for but it would not be off the table for him. His thing is what's going to be the best fit for these families. And that's why he works hand in hand with the navigator, especially during that intake flow, so that he's there meeting the family and the family understands what his role is. And his role is to go out there then and find someplace.
So can you talk a little bit about other resources like for example, the CD money that we're working with you on is a great example because anybody that qualifies for that, you use that funding, make this funding go further. So are there other resources out there, other programs that you can plug plug people into that would make this limited amount of funding go further?
We're definitely going to be utilizing prevention and diversion services for this. We have got residents in the park that I know Chuck knows that do not want to leave. They are very angry, very angry, and all they want, all it appears that they want, because of the voice that's being told, is are you going to pay us to leave? And so therefore, people are saying in the community, they just want to leave, they just want a handout, and that's not true. They're angry. So we have got a very talented group of rapid resolution specialists that know how to deal with difficult situations. And so we will be pairing that team with the housing navigation team. The housing navigation team is going to take lead on this. But when needed, we will bring in those rapid resolution specialists so that we can apply any diversion funding that could be applicable. Maybe there's folks there that don't want to be in Florida any longer. Well, let's take a look at that. Can we do some relocation services? If so, that would be a different pot of funding that will be utilized for that. Do they want to be relocated in another area of the county? If so, okay, let's take a look at our funding that we have through CDBG, through City of St. Petersburg, if that's what they want to be, in the city of Largo, if that's where they want to be. So we will be utilizing all these other funds, but I think the most important one that we're bringing to the table is that rapid resolution. And going in there, by this time, the housing navigators know which families are putting their hands up to know, and then that way they can work with Olivia's team on that and say, okay, this is who it is, this is what their situation is, and then that can determine which rapid housing specialist has those special qualifications to work with that family. And I think that that's another thing too. It's not that we're just gonna say, okay, let Leah's team go out there. You pick somebody and go out, no. We have people that specialize in families with minors and children, those with individuals, and those that can really get to the nitty gritty. You even have Charlie, who is at Safe Harbor, who has specializes in substance abuse. So if that is what would be needed, if that's one of the issues going in there, we ask Charlie to go in and have that conversation. So that's how we're gonna utilize all the different methods.
Thank you.
I have a question about the minimum assistance and short time. So I don't have an idea, but I think I want to assume what it means. So can you tell me more about that?
About minimum assistance,
Mhm.
minimum assistance would be just that hands-on of somebody that says, I don't want to be here anymore, I want to be out of here. Well, then that's travel assistance. So that's a rapid resolution specialist that sets that minimum assistance up, gets the travel arranged, and we move the family to wherever they need to. And maybe do a check, well, not maybe, they do a check-in to make sure that they got to where they were born and that everything worked out the way it was supposed to. That would be minimum assistance, quite frankly. It would be that lesser hands-on, but knowing the stories that I'm hearing from the housing specialist team, that's not gonna really happen. These families, again, it's gonna be crisis resolution first and foremost. Getting the emotions and the feelings under control enough to have a meaningful conversation in regards to what type of housing is needed in their community and what's gonna best work for you. Because then for those that have families, we're dealing with, is there employment? Where's the employment at? Because we can't put you in Tarpon Springs if you're working in St. Petersburg. So we need to work on those. Then we have to connect with the HEAT team at Pinellas County Schools to make sure that the kids' schools is not interrupted. What happens if we can't move someone out, especially a family out within the time frame? We're gonna have to go to non-congregate sheltering, which is hotel motel. And if we do that, we definitely have to connect with that HEAT team to make sure that busing is set up for that first day so that school is uninterrupted. So it's ongoing in every individual, every household needs different. So to say minimum, it would be that light touch of somebody who actually says, yes, we just want travel assistance. But I don't believe that's going to happen at all.
You guys been there a little bit now, and you made a comment that a lot of people are angry, right? And I saw that, and we did some, we had a resource fair. A bunch of people come in, we had a lot of nonprofits, maybe about a dozen nonprofits come in. The idea was to connect each and, connect them with those nonprofits. Where, they were all in the room, go talk to any folks you think can help you. And none of them were funded at the time, and a lot of the responses were, well, I think you need to call 211. And they just didn't see a lot of value. We were trying to do something good, and they looked at it as a dog and pony at the 2 or 3. And some of them saw the value in what we were doing, we were appreciative. Others got angry, management wasn't happy. The park manager is losing the job, she's in the same boat, she hasn't been helpful at all. So you guys have kind of, attacked that hurdle, and it seems like you're clearing it a little bit, and you're starting to gain some trust in the community. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that the case?
With the residents, we're gaining trust, but I can tell you as of this morning, while I was sitting here waiting, I had a message from Alex in regards to the park manager. And I said, I'll tell Chuck, so just not being happy that we're there on the property. Not being happy at all. And our whole conversation back was, but you notified the city to say you weren't happy when you didn't see us for a few days. And I made that statement of, it was Erica, the housing navigator, was taking leave, was only out a few days for a family emergency. And she says, and you were calling the city then when I wasn't there. I was available on phone. So she's like, we're here and we're helping residents, thank you, and moved on to the residents. So it's a slow process, Chuck, honestly. What the greatest hurdle for us to overcome is happening right now, which is having that interpreter. Having the interpreter services is vital, and we did not realize. how vital it was at the very beginning. So I'm so thankful for the city for saying, get some translation services in there. This is great to do. The Hispanic Outreach Center is very excited to be working with us, and we have been residents too. So I think that that's a winning situation there. Is that the Hispanic Outreach Center doesn't just hire people to interpret language. They hire people that care. And that going hand in hand with Erica and David taking the lead, if there is other services that are needed, we've built those good community relationships and those linkages. I think the really fun thing about housing navigation that a lot of people don't understand is that they're directly connected to our workforce development project. Because our goal is housing stability. And in order to do that, there has to be good income coming in the door. So Erica and David, while they're there and they appear focused on housing, they have to work on family budget with families and households. And if something seems like more could be done, they're going to call Joe, the workforce development officer, and say, Joe, could you come with me next Wednesday when I'm out? I really want you to maybe talk to this person. I think they'd be great for your program, but I need you to be the voice for your program because he's so passionate about his program. And then the same thing would be for social service needs. Bringing Olivia's rapid rehousing team and her into the mix work well. Olivia has worked within social service field here in Dallas County for quite some time, knows more people than what I can even believe that I can know, and knows how to reach out and say to a family. I know you might not want to hear it. I know it's very difficult for you to hear this, but let's talk about benefit application and what it would mean to you into your family and how I can help you get there.
And I also think just to add her ability to minimize the fearful impact of applications and getting the support is really evident. I have seen her share, and speak with families who wanted absolutely nothing to do with anything we were offering. And at the end of the day, they were hugging her, thanking her, changing their lives. I mean, it's just her passion. And she actually received, I was really excited to see she received a JWB award for her work in the community at some point in time this past year. So.
You mentioned that you all are already working with some of the residents. How do they connect to you? How do they get connected to you? Sort of a referral process or?
We literally went out with, the city put together a team with the street outreach employee with the city of St. Peter or city of Clearwater, and we went door to door, and that's what we're doing today. Reaching out via cell phone doesn't work. The residents won't return your call, although once the relationship's been built, now Erica, the housing navigator, is able to communicate with the families via text messaging. Works the best, honestly. She's been able to maintain communication that way, but the best way is for us to go out door to door. And so what they're doing today is introducing the Hispanic Outreach Center, and that they'll be a part of this process. And again, going through the program, we've done some intakes, but we're finding that we're going to have to do probably those three personal touches first before we start that intake process. And so they'll review the project once more with them that we currently have and the funding that we currently have available to us. And then we start the intake process from there. We were hoping that the park manager would assist us with some of this paperwork, and that really wasn't working out well. So we're going to need to rethink that strategy.
So question, just based on some of your work that you've done there already, what percentage of the residents that sort of remain do you think can resolve their situation to continue on in some form of permanent housing without first entering our homeless crisis response system?
My goal is 100%. I do not want anybody entering. I do not want anyone entering. Even if we go to non-congregate sheltering, that to me is still falling under the prevention end. That is our goal, is to keep everybody in the prevention. That's why it's so important to have that exit strategy plan. And make sure that everybody knows and is aware, because then we would be able to highlight if we do have a household that we know is gonna struggle. There could be multiple evictions, there could be criminal history that we have to resolve, and if we need to take that time to do that, we'd be able to say that from that exit plan and say, okay, this is the household, this is what the situation is. This is where we're currently working with that.
And that's also where David comes in with the landlord liaison and saying, okay, look, we know we have a family with some challenges, and because of those relationships, some of those, I can't say this for sure, but he's been able to help get some families housed that have had challenges, significant challenges.
I have a question. Is there a way to involve Pinellas County schools before, right now in the process, in the prevention process? Are they involved?
We could, but quite frankly, the heat team is very overwhelmed right now also with the amount of those that are literally homeless. We've got 118.
147 families.
147.
147. It's the last email I get at night before I go to bed, and first, and I see every morning, that 147 families as of last Friday on a shelter wait list. So we don't want these families going anywhere near that list. And so.
And if they're on the wait list, that means they're literally homeless now?
Yes, they are, and if they're on the wait list, they are on the streets.
Okay.
They are on the streets. They are waiting for shelter.
Right in their cars or
Yes. Maybe shared housing.
couches?
They could be doing some shared housing. But more than likely, they're in their cars.
I was just wondering if maybe contacting some of the bilingual, or not necessarily the bilingual, but some schools have family liaisons. And since some of these families may not necessarily meet the criteria for the HEAP program, but so some reassurance can be given to those with children, that the children may be able to stay in the same school with their friends.
The first thing that I would want to do with the families is to see if they are connected with Family Works through Directions for Living. And
Okay.
if not, make that linkage. I feel that would be the strongest linkage for them. Because they have got the county-wide program, and then they have specific targeted zip codes in St. Petersburg if any of those families were to move into that area. So the program can follow that student. So that would be the first step I would do, and that's going to be intensive case management. And it is also a preventative, hoping to keep the family out of homelessness.
So I have another question that may not be related to the funding, but more so for your presence at the Capri Mobile Home Park. Have you noticed any other activity there, or maybe non-legit people offering things, praying?
Our team has not yet.
Okay.
If they did, we would immediately invite them.
Okay.
Nothing. But no, we haven't heard of anything.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So, you know, with your experience out there now, if there was another organization that was very capable and qualified, would it be an asset to work alongside them in this effort? Would it be difficult to mobilize that? It was a shared kind of opportunity.
You know, that's always a really good question, Chuck. There's, because of the role of DHLA within the COC, we always want to work for our community providers. You know, I sometimes there can be challenges with, you know, I kind of equate this to if you have a person with a dotted line to two different people. Sometimes there can be, I don't say challenges, but not problems, it's sometimes little quirks, little challenges in implementation and in planning. However, from what I've seen in this community, social service organizations, at the end of the day, only want to do what's best for the residents in this community. And I think that I say, not only for myself, but for the rest of the HLA team, we will always do what we can to work with other social service providers, our community partners, our cities, our counties, our for-profits to make homeless one time, limitless, and to fulfill our mission. Because we don't have all the answers. None of us do. And I would say there might be some families there that might have somehow forged a relationship with another organization. We don't want to limit that relationship. We want to foster that relationship. Because one more family helped in this community is one more family that's stable, that can then one day potentially go back and help another family. So I see this as a continuum. So no, I don't see partnership as a barrier. It's making sure that we're all, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want these families housed. We want them stable. And we can work with others to help make that happen.
One last chance for questions. Well, thank you both for your time.
Thank you all. You know how to find us if you have any questions.
And just so you know, the process, the committee is going to make a recommendation today.
Okay.
So we'll be in touch with you soon.
Wonderful. Well, have a great day. Enjoy this beautiful weather. It's just gorgeous out today. Thank you. Thank you so much. And if you want to know more about our landlord liaison position, please feel free to reach out. Absolutely. Like we'd love to, I mean, seriously, it's been very successful. We're trying to really enhance it even more. So I think it's great.
The rest of the community, so I'll reach out.
Please do. Thank you. Have a great day.
So we're going to take a break for a few minutes, maybe like a 5-minute break, and then we'll get back together and we can discuss and determine the recommendation. Great. So what we're gonna ask of you is just to continue however much more discussion you need. And then once you feel like you've gotten a consensus for one of you to make a motion to recommend one provider or the other. So I'll open the floor to all of you.
You know, the HLA's been out there, and as you can tell, I think, at least what I've learned from their experiences, there's a learning curve in just getting engaged out there, you know? And we just don't have that much time. You know, and I thought they did a great job today. St. Vincent de Paul, great organization, you know? I mean, the question I asked at the end, I thought was kind of the obvious one about, can they work together on this? You know, I don't know that they need to be partners in this funding to work together on this. I think St. Vincent de Paul can engage, you know, without being part of this. But I thought, my scoring actually had St. Vincent de Paul a point higher. The budget question was a yes or no question. I would have given HLA much higher points on the budget level because of the, you know, they're putting all the money back in, it's all clients, it's all direct service. And that, you know, that's a huge difference, but it didn't really reflect in the scoring. So I think in my scoring, I think HLA would have jumped over the top of that. Had that question been a little bit different.
I mean, I agree they're already out there. It seems they've got a more organized kind of plan. And again, they're already out there. It's learning curve actually going out there and communicating with clients. They've already done that. They're, you know, what's that?
I think the structure the Homeless Leadership Alliance is presenting, it will also help with the accountability because they are presenting very clear goals and it would be easier to go back and discuss, you know, how where they are in the process. So that's really, I like the structure. So that's really why when I was scoring and reading and I went back, I really favor their application because of that.
I think either would do a great job. It was interesting because on paper, I did rate St. Vincent de Paul higher. But after listening to, I guess, both organizations, I was able to see, I think I was able to see a little bit clearer with the description of the landlord liaison. I think I was able to hear advocacy, relationship building. I like the system approach. They were even talking about the kids getting into the bus. So I kind of was able to envision more of a family being taken care of, which shifted my view and perspective. So I think I'm leaning more toward HLA. I think I'm learning these acronyms. So
That's why I avoid them.
still trying to get it together, but
My comment about St. Vincent de Paul's budgets wasn't a criticism. These groups need admin, they need that, you know, we just need to be able to operate. But when you put, you know, their proposal against what HLA is proposing, and, you know, it's like, hey, you know, there's a difference here. You know, they're both great organizations. I think, you know, I think St. Vincent de Paul, you know, on a rapid rehousing front, I think they got fantastic experience in our county. You agree with that, John?
Yes.
You know, perhaps stronger than the HLA. You know, part of what he said and not being able to get to tap into those rapid rehousing funds until the homeless is a little bit of it is what it is. It's a requirement of those programs, but it might cause a little bit of a hiccup in how things move along. So you want people, the ideal thing is to get these people directly from these units into permanent housing. And it's a shame that their funding sources aren't flexible enough to be able to do that. But, you know, if HLA is the choice today, I sincerely hope that St. Vincent de Paul is plugged into this, one way or the other.
I think St. Vincent de Paul is more known among the Latino community. Since, you know, they have been in Pinellas County for a long time for, utility assistance, so I think, the HLA, learning the acronyms, is aware of that. Is aware of that, not in competition mode, but is aware of their name, not necessarily being familiar to a lot of folks. Even though they have been behind a lot of programs for housing for so long, that's the reason I think they might be already working with the community, trying to build that trust. Because they are not necessarily a brick and mortar organization where people can come in and knock at the door. So they need to introduce themselves to families in the prevention stage and crisis mode. And I think they're doing it very well.
And I think the challenge is the focus on prevention. And we've seen that works, that prevention, we've had a lot of success with prevention and then also diversion programming. It's had a high success rate. And St. Vincent de Paul was talking about some of the success rate too. But the challenge with unlocking some of the community's greatest resource for rapid rehousing dollars is going off of the coordinated entry list, which means that people have to be literally homeless before they can access those resources. It's just how those dollars are set up in the community. So I do think though, in what's going to happen and why it would be helpful to have, you know, both organizations involved in one stage or another. When we get to the point of actual closure, we have residents that are angry, you have residents that don't engage. They're going to find themselves homeless potentially. If they've got no other family to go to or no other options, and that won't be addressed until someone actually says you need to physically leave. And then we're gonna have to make sure that there's engaged organizations at that point too, which may mean other funding sources and other sort of involvement. But I think, you know, with these kind of closures, it gets more intense toward the actual closure. But if you've got people who are very upset and sort of are more or less thinking that they might be paid to leave, and are gonna hang out to the very last, then, you know, we're gonna need the help also of an organization with the rapid rehousing expertise, which HLA has too. They help do some of that work and have some oversight responsibility for that work too. But I think making sure that is plugged in, because they might not be eligible today, but some families and individuals may be eligible when it shuts down. They've not availed themselves of any of the opportunities to, you know, work on prevention activities.
Both organizations are great collaborators, I think. But, you know, that's exactly what HLA is. That's their foundation, is they have to be the collaborator. They have to bring everybody together to you know, fight these issues.
I did appreciate that HLA wanting to sort of like post a, you know, sort of the housing plan. And so that there's a common available document, you know, to let everybody know at some point what everyone's options are, which I think creates a degree of accountability. But I think also that is the opportunity to sort of rehash that list and see who doesn't at that point have an option listed, and is it because they simply won't engage or we don't know? And you can kind of start to look down the list and see what might be happening as it gets close to closure. If you don't have anything listed on the housing plan, you know, which I thought that was helpful, making that information available, which will help partners in the process too.
Might help residents gain, you know, some trust in the system. They actually see you know, that this stuff can all just be so difficult for them to comprehend when they just see a simple list of how they might end, you know, or what options might be out there for them. That in itself can help.
Yes. And I don't know what to do about I mean, either organization, I think could be skilled in figuring out what to do with management person. And maybe that thaws over time. And maybe a lot of that's anger over not having a job and helping people relocate when you're not even sure what's gonna happen with your own circumstance. I don't know if that person even, they might live in the neighborhood. I don't know.
She doesn't. But I understand, you know, you know, where she's at, maybe in terms of her temperature on this, but to be an instructionist, you know, and that's what it sounds like I'm hearing. That doesn't make any sense. You know, I mean, it doesn't benefit her or the people she's working for to obstruct this process.
Right.
I don't get that.
And maybe having continued involvement on site, if you're not regularly dealing with angry residents, maybe your perspective changes, because I don't know what kind of calls she's receiving, and people are just angry or unpleasant and nasty, you know, she doesn't have a choice but to provide the information. But so maybe it'll thaw over time, but it seems at least maybe obstruction, but it's certainly not preventing, at least sounds like the HOA from talking to residents and working with them, just is not helpful in any of the process, I guess. There's some thought and consensus around what kind of recommendation y'all want to make.
I'm leaning toward, HOA.
And I am too. You know, what about this being a shared effort? Does that get difficult and how you structure it?
I think there can be that request. I think it comes down to sort of, we didn't ask, Simmons and DePaul that, but Monica kind of alluded to, relationship and quirks. I think for them to kind of define what that would look like. And then it would be, I think on our end, it would be easier that you have one sort of lead agency, but then there would be the opportunity if they want to hire in for specific, you know, purposes or want to work directly with like if it is HOA and they want to work directly with the same as DePaul because of certain talents they might have to hire in or augment the team that they have by just simply hiring an organization to come bring what their talent is, which is what I would hope that they would do as this gets into things, as you're looking at what's needed. You know, they've already done the work around some of it around translation services, but then what happens if, you know, greater on-site legal aid is needed, you know, or they're finding that really trying to bring forward, you know, children's mental health services is a necessity. What kind of additional support from other partners can they bring? If there's a resource out there to pay for it already and just sort of augment the team, great. If not, then, you know, how do you make sure that they're, you know, through this pool might be resourced to make sure that the needs are met. So I think the easiest thing is to pick one provider, but then also that they need to be sort of transparent about what their needs are and where, you know, others might have some strengths that they may not. And maybe it is toward the latter part of this, that they would involve, like I said, it's DePaul around rapid rehousing would be a key provider there. But I think to pick one and then sort of let them flesh out exactly what, you know, kind of team and arrangement they want. So you got one lead that's doing stuff and you're not splitting opportunities. But I would say the work around rapid rehousing has to start now too. So that's ready to go should people become homeless.
I have a question and then I can make the motion. Have we identified veterans at the Capri Mobile Home Park?
We tried to get, you know, the residents to fill out these information sheets for us.
Mhm.
Because of the anger, because of difficulty with the property manager, we got very few. So we really don't have any idea
Okay.
what we're looking at for veterans. Obviously, we know that it's heavily Hispanic, we know that.
Mhm.
We know that there's quite a few folks that, could be helped by the AAA, area agency on aging, because they're in that demographic as well. But we don't have a lot of specific data on residents, so I don't know the answer to that.
And I know, many of them moved from South Concord.
Yes.
Okay, so I can make the motion. So I can move and make the motion to select the Homeless Leadership Alliance to lead the Capri Mobile Home Resident Relocation Project.
Second.
Is everyone in favor of that?
Yes. I agree with Doug's statement about, partnering with one. If any particular flexibilities need to be given to them to work with folks that can really help, then, we do what we gotta do.
And I think part of it will come through greater assessment that takes place over there, because I think to your point, Maria, they do identify veterans. I mean, that's the bread and butter of a lot of the work that Signals and DePaul does. They're experts in that field and services. And so all the more reason, HOA is gonna need to be sort of like the group that pulls people together, and has those knowledge and pieces at their fingertips. Because that could unlock other resources that, an assessment will show us. But I think you're right about the area agency on aging as well. There's some work that I think could be done there, but then they can help identify other resources that might be available for, relocation for our aging population, which we know from the work in Prospect Towers sometimes takes a while.
Well, thank you so much for your recommendation. So we're selecting HLA, and I think the point to check on, engagement of other organizations might be at that February 24th plan, when they've had a little more time to figure out the needs. And so we'll make sure to make a note of that. Help them connect with any other organizations that might make sense. But we really appreciate all of your time and efficiency in what is a really quick turnaround process and your presence today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.